I witnessed two pieces of paper placed on the table. One was a divorce form. The other was a letter written like this to Alex and Emily. "I can no longer stay in this house. Please live happily, Jennifer." I was devastated and broke down in tears over my wife's disappearance. There was 1-year-old Emily looking at me with an innocent smile. I buried my own heartache and decided to raise Emily, the daughter left in my care, with all my might. Every year, anonymous birthday gifts arrived for Emily, but Jennifer never returned. However, when Emily turned 18, all the mysteries were finally solved. I am Alex. I'm a man in my late 40s. I live with my nearly 18-year-old daughter, just the two of us. I run a small bakery in my hometown, and Emily helps out in the shop, sometimes as a part-time worker. My main job is baking bread. Customer service has been handled for about 10 years by a part-time worker, Mrs. Wilson. We also have several student part-time workers, including Emily and Mrs. Wilson's son, Chris. Emily and Chris are both high school seniors, each attending different schools. They went to the same elementary and junior high schools, and they see each other at the bakery, so they kind of have a brother-sister relationship. When Mrs. Wilson, Chris, Emily, and I are all together, someone looking from the outside might think we're a close-knit family of 4. In fact, I'd had customers say that to us, and I've responded, it might look that way, but it's not the case. My wife, Emily's mother, suddenly disappeared when Emily was just over a year old. Jennifer and I met in a college club. We were both mystery novel enthusiasts and belonged to the same mystery book club. But without any real-life mysteries or strange cases to solve, we were drawn to each other in a very ordinary way and started dating. After bookstores, our most frequent date destinations were bakeries. We both loved bread so much that we traveled far to queue up at famous bakeries. In college, I was in the literature department, vaguely aspiring to be a novelist, but I realized I didn't have much literary talent. During job hunting season, I was in a state of limbo, unsure of what to do. While Jennifer, who was in the nursing department, became busy with her studies, I was left to ponder what I should do next. In the end, unrelated to mysteries, I went to a baking school, and Jennifer graduated from the College of Nursing and started working at a university hospital. Jennifer often said, "I'll support you until you can open your own shop," but I tried my best not to let it come to that. Balancing school and part-time work, we both probably thought we would get married eventually, but I felt I needed to be able to support Jennifer sooner rather than later. Despite her busy schedule with night shifts and me cutting down on sleep to study and work, we both worked hard for our future. Even though we couldn't spend as much time together as during our student days, fortunately, after finishing my specialized training and a few years of apprenticeship, I was able to open my own bakery. Luckily, it was featured in a magazine right from the start, and I had a smooth beginning. Jennifer had reached a position somewhere between mid-level and senior at the hospital. I made Jennifer wait until we were nearly 30, but I finally proposed, and we got married without a hitch. Jennifer switched jobs from the university hospital to a local long-established hospital so she could help out at the bakery. This hospital, Riverside Hospital, located in the heart of the city, had been there for a long time and had many departments like a university hospital. I had been there before for things like colds or tonsillitis. Unlike the university hospital, Riverside Hospital offered quick care for even minor symptoms and had more flexible work schedules. Jennifer started working there part-time. However, that didn't last long as we were soon blessed with a child, and Jennifer went on maternity leave. After a few months of working, most women working at Riverside Hospital had their babies there, and Jennifer did the same. The day Jennifer went into labor, I closed the bakery temporarily and took her to Riverside Hospital. It seemed somewhat dimmer and quieter than I remembered, but I couldn't afford to dwell on such things. So I sat in the old faded chair in the hallway under the dim lights, fervently praying until I heard the baby's first cry. Jennifer safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. According to the hospital's policy, Jennifer was able to take maternity leave until the day before Emily turned 1. After spending as much time as possible with Emily, Jennifer returned to work. She wanted to return as a full-time employee instead of part-time, and I wholeheartedly supported her decision at this time. I believe Jennifer wanted to restart her career as a nurse, which she hadn't actively pursued, while supporting me since my plans for opening a shop were uncertain. She'd have stayed at the university hospital instead of moving to better opportunities. I wanted my wife, who had been so accommodating to my career, to do as she pleased going forward. However, while Jennifer initially returned to work full of energy, after 3 months her exhaustion became apparent. I repeatedly told her, "You don't have to work so hard. The bakery is doing well, and even if Riverside Hospital doesn't work out, you have your RN license and can work anywhere. Why not take a break until Emily starts nursery?" But Jennifer just shook her head and didn't take a leave. Every time Jennifer left for work, Emily would cry her heart out every day. I keenly felt how important mother's presence is to a child. However, I couldn't ignore Jennifer's desire to work. I made an effort to take on more household and child care responsibilities to ease Jennifer's burden. It was about 6 months after Jennifer returned to work when something unbelievable happened. Early one morning, after going to the bakery to prepare dough and returning home before opening, I saw 2 pieces of paper on the table. One was a divorce form. The other was a letter that read, "To Alex and Emily, please forgive my selfishness. I can no longer stay in this house. Please do not try to find me. Please live happily, Jennifer." I broke down in tears, overwhelmed with shock. There was Emily, smiling at me without a care in the world. I held her while sobbing and blamed myself. It must have been my fault. Lately, I have been so busy that I haven't been kind to Jennifer. She must have grown tired of me unknowingly. I must have ignored or taken Jennifer's feelings for granted. Maybe, just maybe, Jennifer found someone better. I tortured myself with these thoughts filled with regret and self-reproach. But no matter how hard it was, I knew I had to raise Emily happily. When I looked at Emily's face, unaware of her mother's disappearance, she innocently shouted, "Baba," in joy. Truth is stranger than fiction. I never wanted to experience such a thing firsthand. Mysteries where resolution is always waiting are completely different from real life. I continued crying, believing that the only solution was for Jennifer to return. Later, when I calmed down and looked around the room, Jennifer's belongings had completely vanished. Emily cried every day, missing Jennifer. I couldn't calm my heart in those days, but I knew I had to regain my composure as quickly as possible and focus on raising Emily, ignoring my own pain. I realized that living each day properly was the best I could do. After much thought, I decided to ask for help from my parents who lived nearby to balance work and child care. I didn't explain everything clearly to my parents. Even so, they sensed something was amiss and helped without pressing me for details. I managed to establish a stable life for the time being, but my inner wounds remain unhealed. On the other hand, Emily seemed to have naturally accepted life without her mother, appearing cheerful. 6 months after Jennifer left, and as Emily's 2nd birthday approached, I reached a certain conclusion. Whether to file the divorce papers that Jennifer left, this was a crucial issue linked to how I should tell Emily about Jennifer, who was still too young to understand. Half a year ago, I thought Jennifer must have found another man, but now I couldn't believe that she would leave Emily behind, especially after she had cared for her so lovingly. Therefore, I concluded that Jennifer's disappearance must have had a reason other than another man's involvement. I couldn't explain what it was, but if Jennifer had no intention of remarrying, I decided not to file the divorce papers and to tell Emily that her mother was away on work. As Emily passed 2 years old, she would gradually start to understand more details. I thought this would at least prevent her from feeling abandoned by her mother. We celebrated Emily's 2nd birthday with just me and my parents. Along with the cake, I baked special birthday bread and decorated the room brightly. Emily, still not adept at blowing out candles, did it together with Grandma. Until the end, Grandma helped her struggle to open the big box with her doll present. During our small but joyful party, the doorbell rang. When I went to answer it, it was a delivery person. Inside the not too small, not too big box were a stuffed toy and a storybook. Neither my parents nor I recognized them. After wondering for a while, I finally checked the sender information. It was anonymous. We belatedly realized the only person who would do this was Jennifer. Why go through all this trouble? Why not come back and celebrate in person? For a moment, anger towards Jennifer welled up in my heart. It was so confusing. But then a sweet voice brought me back to the moment. "Who's it from?" When Emily asked who the present was from, I had my first chance to give the answer I had decided upon, albeit in an ironically sudden way. "It's a present from Mommy. Mommy is working far away. Even though she's far, she's celebrating with you, Emily. That's nice, isn't it?" I'll never forget Emily's face lighting up after I told her that. No matter what circumstances Jennifer had for doing this, I vowed to always tell Emily this story. For her 3rd birthday, educational toys arrived, and for her 4th, a toy instrument. A backpack came well before she started elementary school. And as she grew older, electronic devices and branded clothes for kids arrived every year, beautifully and anonymously, as birthday presents. During all this time, Emily grew up believing what I had told her. When asked by her nursery friends, "Does Emily not have a mom?" she would reply, "I do. She's far away, working as a nurse. My mom is amazing, just as I had taught her." When Emily was 8 years old, a mother and her son moved into the vacant house across the street. They were Mrs. Wilson and her son, Chris, who still works part-time for me. Mrs. Wilson openly shared with me that she had divorced due to her ex-husband's involvement in a criminal case and had come to start anew as a single mother. Coincidentally, I was looking for a part-time employee at that time. Feeling it was fate, I immediately asked if she would work at the bakery, and she accepted. Chris, who is the same age as Emily, was a very honest, cheerful, and good kid. When Emily innocently asked him, "He's your dad, also working far away?" Chris pondered for a moment before replying with a smile, "I guess so, but I'm completely happy just having my mom. I don't feel lonely." Emily was astonished, her mouth agape in admiration. It was after this that Emily unexpectedly said to me, "I'm not lonely, even though Mom isn't here." Until then, Emily often asked me when Jennifer would return and if we could call her. I had only been able to give vague answers like, "If you're a good girl, she will," or "It might take a little longer." But such questions gradually diminished. One day, my mother, who looked after Emily while I was at work, said to me, "You should tell her the truth. Emily knows your stories are not true. She's just too kind to ask about it." Emily was almost old enough to enter junior high school. One evening after dinner, I decided to talk to her. "Emily, actually, your mom is?" "Dad, I don't want to know. I'm happy now with you, Grandma and Grandpa. I don't want to hear about Mom and ruin that happiness. Mom must be somewhere, right? It would be nice to meet her someday, but not now." Chris said the same thing. I was surprised by Emily's mature attitude. Children grow up faster than I thought, and I learned that Chris, like a big brother, was genuinely concerned about Emily. I felt, perhaps selfishly, that not submitting the divorce papers was the right decision. I thought that if Emily ever met Jennifer, it would be sad if they weren't related by registry. At the same time, Emily's attitude made me hope that I might meet Jennifer again someday. Every birthday, when a present arrived, I felt a mix of confusion and relief. I feared the day the gifts would stop coming. Sometimes I dreamt a nightmare where Jennifer was gone forever and the present stopped, leaving Emily and me in tears. Despite her leaving me, I still loved Jennifer. Mrs. Wilson and I raised Emily and Chris together, helping each other out for 3 years. In junior high school, they were in the same class, which I considered a miraculous fate. During events like parent-teacher conferences and school festivals, where parental participation was necessary, either Mrs. Wilson or I attended. Most of the other parents treated us as if we were a couple. Mrs. Wilson and I simply smiled and brushed off any unnecessary comments. After Emily entered high school, the gifts from Jennifer became book vouchers. "I don't really read books," Emily would grumble. I tried recommending the mystery novels I used to enjoy, but she didn't seem to find them interesting. I picked up a book Emily had left on the sofa, flipping through it casually. It was the latest installment in a series by an author I used to read all the time. A wave of nostalgia washed over me. It was the newest book I had, but there must be even newer ones in the bookstores now. Since Jennifer left, I had stopped reading novels, partly due to a lack of time, but mostly because I no longer found reality in stories where planned plot lines were neatly resolved in the end. If reality were like a mystery novel, the story wouldn't make sense with Jennifer not returning for over a decade. There's no sign of a day when Emily and I can clap our hands and say that all our sadness and suffering were for this ending. So I have to conclude that novels and reality are indeed different. There are no fairy tales in real life. I closed the novel, placed it on the table, and went to the bakery for the afternoon preparation. That night, as I recall, Mrs. Wilson's gas stove broke or something, and we ended up having dinner together at my place, all four of us. This kind of thing had happened a few times before. During dinner, Chris asked to borrow the novel. I only skimmed through it, but it wasn't very interesting, Emily interjected. I chided her gently. Hey, Emily, everyone has their own taste in what they find interesting. Chris finished the book the next day and came to borrow another. I was so pleased that I ended up giving him all the novels by that offer that I had. When I told Emily, she looked up thoughtfully and said, I thought Chris was more into sports, considering he went to high school on a football recommendation, right? When I asked Emily, she replied nonchalantly, Chris wants to be a police officer, but you know if you have a criminal in a family, you can't become one, right? I think Chris knows that. I was at a loss for words. Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband had been an accountant but was arrested for embezzlement, which led to their divorce and move. I didn't know the details about where or how, but it was a fact that Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband was arrested for a crime. However, my knowledge from reading novels allowed me to respond to Emily like this. Each state in the U.S. has different hiring criteria for police officers, and these standards aren't always made public. For instance, the disqualification reasons for the police officer exam, and some states only specify that the applicant themselves must not be involved in a crime. So it's not entirely accurate to say that Chris doesn't qualify. I understood that it was probably a long shot, but I chose to focus on the hopeful aspect. Wow, so it's not completely impossible for him to become a police officer? That's great. Hey, can I give all my book vouchers to Chris then? They'd be useful, right? I told her it was okay. Jennifer would have said the same if she were there. I faintly realized that Emily had a crush on Chris and felt happy about it. Emily was about to have her summer break in her senior year of high school. Her birthday is during the summer vacation. Emily finally turned 18. I'm glad she's grown up healthy and strong. On a very hot day when the bakery was closed, Emily and I went to a nursing home in the next town. Emily's grandpa passed away a few years ago. Her grandma lives in this home. You came to visit, Emily. Alex, is the bakery okay? Yay, Mom, it's our day off. Are you doing okay? I'm just the same. But how's the bakery doing, Alex? My mother's memory started to fade a bit after my father passed away. She began wandering at night, so we moved her to the nursing home last year. Emily adored her grandma, who had always taken care of her with love. Grandma, I brought you flowers today. You like some flowers, right? Oh my, they are so big. Did you grow them in science class in elementary school? Yay, that's right. They grew so tall, I bought 3 of them. Is that so? Is that so? Thank you. That night, Chris declared to his father that he would become a police officer. Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband reassured Chris that he could become a police officer since there were no criminals in his family. Emily kept repeating to me the story. It's amazing, isn't it? Like something out of a drama. Chris is so lucky he can achieve his dream. Well, the reason for clearing his dad's name is gone now, but it's still like a movie. I listened to Emily's happy story over and over, nodding each time. I, too, was amazed and genuinely impressed by the dreamlike resolution in Mrs. Wilson's family story. But it wasn't just their family. Our own story was about to reach its climactic conclusion. I was doing paperwork for the bakery at home when the phone rang. Ah, boss, there's a somewhat suspicious customer at the shop, said one of the part-time workers. I immediately headed to the bakery. Before even entering, I saw the customer in question. A woman sitting on the terrace in front of the shop, eating bread and crying incessantly despite the good weather. No one else was sitting outside because of her. The part-time worker noticed me and hurried over. I'm grateful for buying lots of bread, but she's been crying like that for over an hour while eating. I told the part-timer to go back inside and approached the woman alone. "Ma'am, no, Jennifer." There was no mistaking her. It was Jennifer. She had aged just as I had imagined in my mind, yet she was still beautiful. Jennifer was there. "Jennifer, welcome back." Jennifer looked up at me with her face scrunched up in tears, but her mouth was full of bread. "I'm home, Alex." I brought Jennifer a fresh iced coffee and sat down opposite her. "Are you finished eating? Would you like some more?" Jennifer shook her head no. It seemed odd to me that she looked so sad. For my part, I was a bit at a loss for where to begin. I was careful not to ask in a way that might make Jennifer suspicious or drive her away again. The more cautious I tried to be, the deeper the silence grew. Jennifer didn't start talking either, just looked down. After about 10 minutes of silence, I made up my mind to start the conversation. "Have you been well?" "Yes. How about you and Emily?" "We're getting by, you know." "Jennifer, where?" Before I could ask where she had been, Jennifer quickly started talking over me. "Your wife and son, everyone looks so happy. That's great. I didn't come here to disrupt your new family. I missed your bread, and I thought I'd come when your wife wasn't here. But then I started eating, and I couldn't help but cry." I didn't immediately grasp the context of Jennifer's words, but as I kept listening, it began to make sense. "I saw you by chance the other day. You were walking happily with your new wife, Emily, and the boy. It was such a bright scene in the sunset. I didn't know whether to feel happy or sad, but I should say congratulations." Jennifer's habit when she lied poorly was to talk rapidly like this. I still remembered it well. "Carly," I said, "first, you should say congratulations to Emily, and about what you saw. Yes, Emily's 18 now, right? But she doesn't need me in her life. Maybe it's better not to tell her. I've been sending her presents for 16 years, but it was selfish of me. I thought you and Emily would be waiting, but I understand now that's not the case." Jennifer started to cry again. I couldn't hold back my tears either. Jennifer had intended to come back. I realized waiting for Jennifer had been the right decision. This realization made me feel like my 17 years of patience had been rewarded, and all the tension I had been holding inside me loosened, crying. I told Jennifer that I had never filed for divorce and had been waiting for her all this time, and that Mrs. Wilson and Chris were not a new family for us. Jennifer broke down crying even more, but then revealed an astonishing mystery from her side. 17 years ago, when she turned to work at Riverside Hospital, Jennifer accidentally overheard a conversation between the director and the hospital's accountant. It was clearly about covering up hospital malpractices and tax evasion. Unable to ignore what she had heard, she later visited the director's office. At first, the director dismissed her concerns as a misunderstanding, but as Jennifer kept coming back, he became irritated and finally threatened her. "Do you want to lose your job? If you keep sticking your nose in this, there will be consequences. I don't care if I'm fired. I will make this public. I can't tolerate wrongdoing." "Really? You might be okay, but what about your family? Your daughter is just a baby." The director began hinting at retaliation against her family. Jennifer, thinking he wouldn't actually harm her family, decided to inform her colleagues and superiors about the malpractice. But before she could, she was fired from the hospital and started noticing suspicious cars and people following her. Fearing for May and Emily's safety, she quietly left our home the next morning. She then moved to a different city, started working at a small clinic, and lived alone. When she saw the news about the accountant being arrested, she felt heartbroken but resigned to the fact that there was nothing she could do. However, she heard rumors that the director's crimes might be exposed soon, and she quietly returned to our town to check on us. That's when she saw Mrs. Wilson, Chris, Emily, and me walking together happily and choked, quickly leaving after sharing our stories. I decided to ask Jennifer one more question. "So, Jennifer, Will you come back home with us if Emily is okay with it? I'd like to live together again. Then, if Emily agrees, we'll welcome you back into our family properly. Prioritizing Emily's feelings. I carefully arranged for Jennifer's return. Both Jennifer and I were nervous, but Emily's first reaction was unexpectedly casual. You're my mom. Wow, that's amazing. So if I grow up, I can be as beautiful as you? That's great, like something out of a drama. Hey, Mom, I want to be a nurse. You'll teach me everything, right? Jennifer was initially surprised by Emily's straightforward reaction, but soon smiled and replied, I'll teach you everything, Emily. Let's live together from now on. Then Emily said dryly, not right away, I plan to marry a police officer, so there'll be lots of transfers and moving around. Wait for me until I'm an aunt, okay? I whispered to Jennifer about Chris. Jennifer softly said to me, Thank you for raising such a strong and bright girl. Jennifer came back home, and 4 years later, as Emily had declared, she married Chris and moved out. True to Emily's plan, the young couple moved around a lot. I prayed that Emily's life would continue to flow as smoothly as she planned. But if she ever had an unexpected hurdle or misfortune, I could say, truth is stranger than fiction, but surely a happier ending than any novel awaits you.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. "It's still working hours." Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. "Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us." "The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.